Hello, Internet. It's Matt. I'm here to talk about the Ninja Turtles. It's kind of funny. There's more Ninja Turtles book for me this month than that I got for like DC, and then for kind of technically some other categories. So I don't know. It's interesting, but I think that's also maybe something that's become a bit of an issue. So to talk it through, if you're unfamiliar, currently the mainline Ninja Turtles book is running something called the Armageddon game. And so there's the Armageddon game, which is like the B book right now. If you've been following Turtles for a while, like there's the mainline book, and there's some B book that might be a one shot or technically a series of one shots, or for a while they did Ninja Turtles Universe or a mini series like Secret of the Foot Clan. Uh, they've been doing this forever. More recently, it was building up Jenica in a number of different ways. But they're also currently doing another one called the Armageddon game, The Alliance. And then there's the mainline book. Now, Armageddon game has been going, and this is essentially the penultimate issue. But I want to talk about some of the problem of that. And so I'm going to bounce back to it. But first, while that's happening, keep in mind IDW has just suffered laybacks, not from creative, because those are all under contract, but from employees who are doing things. So, like Tom Waltz himself had a more editorial capacity at IDW. He's still on for creative, but his other roles have been reduced. That's one example. They've just lost a lot of people too, and it's a lot going on for them with less people to manage it. So, like, they've had this Power Rangers Turtles team up going. Dan Mora, fascinating, just aside from all the rest of it. Dan Mora doing this book while he's doing World's Finest at DC is kind of crazy. I can't think of another time that someone's been doing a big two book like that profile, and then does a book like this as well, which also is like high profile in a very similar way, and almost just kind of crazy. And Dan Mora doing Turtles is awesome, and it's kind of awesome that we have all that going on at once. You could almost imagine another DC Turtles crossover. I'd actually much prefer a World's Finest where the Turtles slid in than like a Batman Turtles thing again. Um, that's just me. Okay, so all the Armageddon game stuff is happening, and then the other thing that's happening is Lost Ronin, The Lost Years, because now there's the Ronin verse that they're building, separate from the mainline Turtles universe, where a lot of talent that is normally on the regular Turtles book is now on the Ronin stuff, either instead of or as well. Now, I want to come back to the Armageddon game. So I know you can't see it too well, but there are 25 entries on this checklist, essentially 2 years worth of books. So, 12 issues for a year's run, um, which would be in line for 1 year's worth of books normally for the Turtles. This has happened in a handful of months. So, I don't know. So, it's frustrating because this was supposed to be a big event. Now, the Armageddon game came after Sophie Campbell's run with, but she's still technically in the mix, but clearly Tom Waltz's hand has come back to guide the book. A lot of things he left off on, and a lot of things that were kind of positioned during his run are being brought to the forebear now, and he is definitely ahead on the book as he's the head writer of this, but not necessarily this. How that actually works, I don't know. But you can also see that in how it was set up, because part of the Armageddon game when they're setting up was opening moves, which were reprints of earlier issues, which was frustrating because it sounded like it was going to be a new book. There's about 3 pages of new material per new issue of the two they did, but yeah. Uh, so this has been set up for a long time, but the idea is that something's happening with the Rat King and all these mystic figures that they built up with the Ninja Turtles. And IDW, the Rat King, is part of this pantheon of gods, essentially, along with this mammoth character, this toad, and like some of Shredder's background gets mixed into this. It's a whole thing, but you've had Leo and Shredder on an adventure. You've had Raph and Old Hob on an adventure. You've had Donnie, Jenica, and a handful of the more Mutantown characters defending Mutantown during a siege. And you've had Mikey dealing with whatever Mikey's dealing with. And you've had this Triceraton character come in and bring forth issue with the Krang that was compelling and interesting to see. That dynamic that they were building, which almost reminded me of DS9 in a way, happening. And they had this God stuff happening as well. Some loosely tied to the split of the Turtles and some not. And in the penultimate issue, the Turtles come back together and they're going to kind of close it out. But that's happening in like 2 issues at the very end of this, blob of stories. Also, what happened was you have Karai, Casey, and some of the Foot and whatnot um, teaming up to fight the Dark Turtles. That has been a mystery running through, where you've had four uh, people claiming to be the Turtles, but they're all wearing like bandanas, like down here and stuff, causing a ruckus. And they apparently were using some glamour charm to appear as if. So you've had all these plots going, and our main characters aren't really there to deal with any given one of them. And the amount of time split on any one of these stories was kind of split, which could be an interesting story idea and whatnot. You have all these things going on, and then it comes at once. So it's kind of, instead of dealing with each story in line like we normally get, this idea of all this stuff happening at the same time adds tension. But when it's this spread out over months, and then even more is happening with more characters, because you do have this extended cast, which does go past what I've been complaining about in other videos, where there are more, human characters, not necessarily human, obviously mutant, but you know, characters beyond just the Ninja Turtles, like hyper enabled characters, but characters that just are part of the world and give more gravitas and meaning. That is interesting. But what's hard about it is you have all these crazy plots happening after maybe getting maybe too much of the other side of what I was asking for with Town, where we had all this building and character stuff kind of slowly happening, but the Turtles book felt like this weird webcomic romance thing, but like nothing was progressing. And so now we're getting this overabundance of plot after this complete underabundance of plot, and it just feels rushed. Even though it's taking 25 issues to do the whole thing, it feels rushed. And I think a large part of that is because they didn't plan properly to get ahead of essentially 2 years worth of books happening, especially when they're doing it in a compressed timeline where they have about 3 books going a month, but they don't have 3 books going a month. They have 3 books going a month plus four plus I'm only count 5 because this was a back matter reprint, but 5. And then I'm going to point to another one that maybe had less on the thing, but was also great. Talk about in a second here. 6 books in a month while they're trying to get over this one thing. So while they've been doing this event that was taxing them to the amount with dwindling resources, they're also coming back to the Roninverse, which keep in mind, the last Ronin delays led into the Armageddon game as well. So all that happened as well. And for something that, is, I think, IDW's part of their bread and butter, they're pushing on it from all angles. It's too much. I mean, this is like the Spider Office level of books, and the Spider Office can't keep up with that, and they have infinitely more resources and history and talent at their disposal and whatnot. It's a little disheartening to see that what could have been a really incredible amount of stories here with the Armageddon game just kind of got pushed through because they wanted to push for this idea that was more like a sales marker than just making good comics. And what kills me about that is if you look through the Armageddon game, there like I said, there's these four splinters, but there's really like six splinters across it. I'm saying splinters because of TMT, the connections there. Uh, they really could have done about 3 years worth of just stories and maybe blended and mixed some of it a little more. But instead of trying to make it all one event, they could have just told these stories and would have had more of the interconnected feel of the books that I loved before, where all these things were interconnected and things happened, but it moved through with a little more deliberate pace. It just it, it stinks of like not editorial interference or some sort of necessity of creators moving through more quickly. It's just unfortunate that what could have been better if it was just given its due time instead of being this event where just stories told forward would have been better. And now I'm circling and repeating myself again, so I apologize. I say all this. These books are still bringing me joy. They're still fun. I think when I slow down and maybe reread them, which I'll probably do when I get the hardback, which apparently I'm doing for this run. I'm buying every issue and then I'm buying a hardback, but more so than other books. Like I said, there's all these books running and da 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 da. The hardbacks are the easiest way to go back and reread them because everything's in a line that makes sense and it's great. Uh, yeah, I just find that interesting. So there's been all that. Now, this Usagi Turtles book. Usagi and Turtles have a long history of collaboration. During the original Turtles run, there was a Usagi jump in issue that was really fun. Um, During Usagi's time at Mirage, that happened. They had a like 3 issue kind of run together that played off of Kappa stuff. But clearly, Eastman and Laird were interjecting some stuff and they were having some fun. Usagi's been in like every version of the cartoon except for Rise, I think. Um, there was that other IDW Turtles Usagi team up from a few years back that was really fun. That was this big one shot. But this time, it's them meeting for the first time again. The turtles are confused for Kappa again. But this really feels like San Sakai is just doing the turtles as a Usagi blend in with his new senso abilities. Yeah, okay. Um, but this is the first issue, and they're going to have a few issues, and I think this is going to be really fun. And if you've been reading Usagi, I feel like this is the most Usagi of these team ups. Uh, it was a really fun issue, and you got to see Sansakai do a moment of just doing the turtles on his own, which was really fun, especially because if you're a fan of Sansakai, I mean, you're really just a Usagi fan. He's done a few other projects, but not too much. And seeing him do something like this is pretty unique. And so it was really fun to read through. I don't know. I've been going through Usagi via the Origins, which is the color reprints runs, and those have been excellent. So yeah, I can't recommend this highly enough for basically everyone. But that's Turtle Talk for this month. Hope you all enjoy. Keep reading.